Hey everybody, welcome to episode 9 of the Leven podcast. I'm your host Leven. Today we have an amazing podcast for you guys. This podcast should have come out a bit earlier actually, but unfortunately when we recorded this, um, the file corrupted or something. It just didn't record, and now we're re-recording this, so hopefully it's even better than it was the first time. I'm joined by Crazz. How you doing, bro?
Hi, Daniel. Thank you for the invitation. I'm fine, thank you.
No problem. A lot of you may know Crazz. Crazz works. I don't know how to define this. You work for, with War Legend. How do you like to say it?
Just work at War Legend, but as a volunteer.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Explain what War Legend do and what you do at War Legend.
For 1 year, War Legend War is organizing Fortnite tournaments at the beginning for French market, and for many months now, we are doing like European events and helping out in the back office the community organizer to organize better tournaments, either with our advice or with our tools, War Legend system. And just so you know, War Legend exists like for almost 20 years now, since 2001. We were like a MMORPG hardcore gamer community, but now
No,
we are on Fortnite. Things change.
rest in peace. Rest in peace, company. Um, yeah, like I obviously remember War Legend a lot from back when I used to play. Like last year, you guys used to run a lot of tournaments. Um, and obviously I think the main tournament that to this day, I think if you ask a lot of pros who played, this time last year, they'll tell you that the Pan European Cup, which War Legend had a lot to do with, obviously was probably the best event we had at the time in the scene. How much did you like have to do in that? What was your role in that?
The Pan-European Cup is actually still the biggest community event allowed by Epic Games in Europe at the moment, for at least an online one, if we remove Katowice. And it required like, I don't know, more than 200 hours of work, I think, like even more.
Wow.
And
Wow.
for me, and we had 10 communities working on it, a bit, I think 11 or 12 casters, each one with a different language. And we had a total of 50 people in France working for this project, with other things obviously, but still that amount of work.
Um, I think with the event, I think what stood out obviously because back then, Epic had it so that we were within EU, we were split into different communities, right? And obviously we had POG, which had the UK community, Bush Paranoia with the Nordics, obviously War Legend with the French. I'm sorry for the other communities I'm missing out, but this was like the biggest, the first time we had all of them in one place and really seeing who would come out on top. I think the biggest thing though is that people also wonder why to this day we haven't had another event similar to that. I think with the lack of practice in the EU and the lack of um, genuinely good events outside of the ones Epic run, why haven't we seen a Pan European Cup 2 happen?
The main issue is that it requires a lot of people. As I said, I think we can count around 100 people working for this event as volunteers with zero budget, zero sponsor, zero support from Epic Games regarding the organization. They help us with the translation, at least. That was really nice of them. But nowadays, when we try to think about organizing a new Pan-European Cup, the main issue we have is first the manpower, and second is the risk that we incur to have people not happy about the game. The main reason is because we would not have any sponsor ready to pay for that. You can imagine, like we can only do like $25,000 of cash price, and people
Yeah,
are competing for worldwide for 30 millions. You're like, yeah, guys,
yeah,
this is a difference.
yeah. How has there been attempts to do it again?
Yeah, we tried. Actually, we almost had a green light from Epic to do it. Uh, main block, the key point that made me stop the project was the technology. We are not ready at the moment with the manpower we have and the workload it represents. We are not ready yet to organize a second. We are working on it right now to have the technology ready for it. The other alternative would be to have Epic allowing us to use the in-game event tool, which would be awesome, but we all know what we are standing on.
Yeah. Well, like, it's interesting you say that because obviously, for a lot of these, I think there are a lot of problems with, like, outside of just playing the game when it comes to, developing the community and having more events and developing esports within Fortnite. Like, a lot of problems would be solved if we just had access to that in-game system, like it's just one small thing. I guess it's not ready. I guess that's the problem. And even there's a lot of things that would help, but they're just not ready. Like custom games are something that still need to be fixed. Like the server quality on customs, just the server quality in general. Obviously now we're the main competitive game mode is trios, and a lot of people still feel like the trio servers just aren't ready. How do you feel about that, to change the trios?
Speak the truth is the event tool in game is not what we are looking for. I think the original idea when the guy at Epic created that was to replace a custom game service, because custom games is just a developer tool. It's meant for allowing developer to test a specific lobby with specific people. It was a test tool.
Yeah.
But the community managers, as you know, in France a lot, we used it for community events. And that's why the tool for at least a year was not like fixed, literally. So if you're looking for a reason why the server are so unstable in custom game, why there is no option, because technically speaking, we are still not able to select who we want in the game. We cannot set some specific rules. We don't have any customization on that. And the main reason is the only thing where actually the custom game were upgraded was from February, when they first delivered the access to the tool to the masses. I don't remember how many thousands of people they gave it, but it was mostly the supporter creator members. So that's why at the moment we don't have that. And the second point, the stability of the servers. From now on, the custom, when you have a custom access, a custom lobby, you have access to a specific fleet of servers, meaning you're not on shared servers with public games. It's supposed to be on high quality servers, but then you have to take in consideration the main view of Fortnite is not having dedicated servers. It's the game itself. Every week you have changes, and every 3 months you have a big change. And we saw that with the World Cup. When the World Cup qualifier started, the game was finally stable in duos. It was just good the way it was. But with all the update after the end of the qualifier, we now have a game that is still not stable and have some lags and issue with latency and stuff. So there is multiple things to take in consideration for the stability and stuff with custom games.
Bro, I feel like it's something that I hope that they're working towards, and obviously I have more to say about it later in terms of the personnel who are in charge of dealing with it. But just sticking on the topic of custom games, and obviously, back in the day, I'll rewind quickly. A lot of when we had the different communities, right?
Yeah.
A big deal that people had in EU that I can remember, because I was one of them, to be honest. People felt like it was unfair in that the French scene. People felt like your community manager, I don't know if your community manager was a lot nicer, so you guys had more access to customs, or what was it? But do you remember that time where there was that kind of tension there, and what was it like from your side?
Yeah, I remember. We had like what we call a language lock, meaning all the events we were allowed to do were to be in French, And it was very funny to see like a lot of European players actually were playing. And when we tried to make some language check to some high ranking players, they were like learning some French words, even in vocal, and using Google Translate to try to mimic like
Yeah,
French
yeah, yeah.
people. It was
Like
very
honestly,
funny.
do you remember a guy called Young Easy or Young Ezzy?
Seriously, we had like thousands of guys. It was you?
It's fine. And no, but I know there's going to be a lot of people who listen to this podcast right now. They're going to remember Young Easy. That guy pretended to be French and he played with like Razaroo for like a week. Like both of them were like pretending to speak French or some shit. And it's funny because even then, right, people were pretending to speak French, but there were people like me. We didn't even pretend. We just had the codes leaked to us. Like I'll be honest, it doesn't matter now because it's gone and past now. But I used to play in like those War Legend Duo custom tournaments, and it was like we'd be getting the code leaked, and it was pretty funny. Obviously now looking back, it's like you kind of mess up the games that way, and it's like people that is actually a problem that we can discuss as well later. But I remember it's pretty funny because there was a time where there was one of those War Legend Duo customs, and I think Osmo at the time wasn't invited to it, obviously, because you guys had, it was only for French people, and like we all had to play streamer mode so that we would, like, you wouldn't see our names, right? And he won a game. But he had streamer mode on, so everyone was like, "Wait a minute, who came first that game? The guy that won the game is not even in the tournament. What's going on?" And yeah, it was back then. It was really fun times, I guess.
Yeah, but we had to say with the time now, I understand how people felt at this time, and it created a lot of tension. But what people need to understand is that the use of custom games was under license agreement for the people using it, meaning we had to follow specific rules, or we could be blacklisted from any collaboration with Epic Games in future. That's why War Legend worked for so many months to respect the rule and make sure rules are applied everywhere. For one reason, if one community were to exploit the custom games for its own advantage without thinking about consequences, all Europe would have lost the access to custom game. And that's something people don't understand even now. We were very close to lose the access months before the loss of access in September, October last year.
Yeah, so speaking of that loss of access, I remember that was a big deal for all of EU. Because that's what we did all day. I remember that's back when I was grinding the most and enjoying the game the most is because I was playing custom games all day. What was that kind of communication? Did you guys talk to Epic about why they did that? How did that affect War Legend as a whole?
The only thing I can tell about what I know for this event is that it wasn't a choice from the marketing publishing teams. It was a choice from another team, and we just had to follow up, and that's it. That's period. That's the only thing we can say. And at the same time, we had the summer I don't recall the name of the skirmish.
Summer skirmish.
No, there was a summer skirmish, and after that there was another one in October. I don't recall the one.
Winter skirmish?
Yeah.
Oh no, winter royale. No, that was fall skirmish. Fall skirmish.
Yeah, exactly. And so how did that impact War Legend? It's very simple. It's just stuck us in a situation where actually we didn't have any activity anymore, and we were on the brink of we were on the stage where we would bring our new technology of replay file point system and open it to PS4 community. And in France, it would have been insane in terms of numbers. And sadly, the guy decided to shut it down. But it was for the best because after that, any tests that were made around custom games shown that actually the custom games are good for the game in terms of viewership, in terms of marketing and stuff, because it's a very nice tool for content creators. And I think we can rely on something is that a few months later, exactly 2 months after that, they announced the creative mode. And that's really important. You need to understand that whatever Epic does, it's not just one entity. It's a multiple group of people working together, sometimes not together, as any big group in the world. So you can have ideas coming up from some teams, and it impact other team after that. So, but we came through. Look where we are today.
Exactly. And speaking as a testament to more what you guys are doing today. Obviously, we had this conversation off podcast. But if you want to just get back into that of what War Legend are now doing today, and the future of what you guys will be doing.
What the last thing we did was organizing tournament for content creators to help them out to have like a proper event. And after that, end of July, just before the World Cup, we organized for Microsoft Store 5 tournaments that will be broadcasted between the World Cup and end of October, if I'm not mistaken. We also help a lot some LAN party organizer to use our tool and to learn how to organize tournaments on Fortnite, because whatever they think, it's never easy to do. And what we try to do now is to push, let's say, better context for competitive environment in community events in the condition Epic Games allows us to do. For example, with the new schedule they published a few days ago regarding the new championship. I don't recall the name exactly, the event.
Championship series.
Yeah, championship series. We're gonna adapt to that and see how we can respond to the need of the community, because we know some of the tournaments are cool because you can gain some money, so players are happy. But some other are not so, I'd say, relevant for them because, from issues of matchmaking and stuff. We're gonna see what we can do to help different organizers and players at the same time in order to make things work smoothly for everyone.
Well, I think based off of what I've seen so far, I feel like you guys can be successful in that. Obviously, there are more problems, like I said, that we're gonna have to discuss later. But in talking about what's happened recently, obviously the Fortnite World Cup concluded about 11, 12 days ago, not too long ago, and obviously you actually were able to attend that. Let's get into that. How did you end up at the Fortnite World Cup?
Actually, that was for the we had a mission for Microsoft Store for the event I told you just before, and so I had the opportunity to be in New York at the same time as the World Cup, and they gladly accepted to delay the return flight, so I can attend the World Cup. And then our contact at Epic were more than happy to, thanks to the opportunity at zero cost, obviously, to grant us an access to the World Cup so we can actually enjoy it. And it was really nice. Like I had to assist to the. It was I have to be honest. It was my first esport competitive. We can say I don't even know with Fortnite of video games. So it was really a good experience in a show. And I really enjoyed it. I left this event with star in my eyes, so I'm really glad for the opportunity and the people who helped me to get there. So that's it.
So talk about the production, because you obviously at War Legend, you guys host events. So obviously you know a lot about a lot than the average person does about hosting events. So from what did you see that impressed you with what they did?
The first thing is that they managed to have an event that went smoothly. That might be a bit crazy to say, but technically speaking, they organized the tournament where actually everything went well from beginning to the end. It started on time, it finished on time, they had breaks, and everything went good. So in terms of production, I'm really impressed by that. The second thing I really appreciated was the website they put on in order to allow people to follow up the event from different perspectives. For example, you had access to the kill log with not even the kill log, like action log. You were able to see. You were able to see when people were taking weapons on the ground. That was just insane in terms of and access to information. On site, it was nice. Were more a show than a real, I'd say, than the experience you had online. Yeah. On site, it was like. For me, for my experience, I'm not an expert in terms of Fortnite competitive.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand what happened in the duo event. Literally, I was like lost between screens and informations. I'm really much enjoy the solo for understanding, much more accessible. I could literally see the two POV of the player fighting together, and sometimes with a third part, the third party view floating over.
Yeah.
It was cool. The solo, I really enjoyed it, literally.
So you obviously in the arena, you guys had, is it free screens you guys had?
Yeah, we had like we had totally three different screen. So we had the stream screen, so basically what people saw on online. We had a second screen allow us most of the time to have a free floating camera, and a third screen used for different stuff, like sometimes camera from the public, like Americans love to do, and sometimes used for the standings, whatever. It was nice to see, literally.
Yeah, because people, speaking to other people who I know who went to the event, they told me that it was a great spectacle. It was amazing production, but in terms of purely just watching Fortnite, and like really trying to get a deep dive into what's going on, the viewing experience at home, due to the website that they provided, was probably a bit better in that sense.
Yeah, just to give you a hint, they tested in the Pro AM in June format where actually all the players have a camera with animation on it, like drinking a potion, getting a weapon. The problem is we had to watch a screen that was above the stage, and the player screen were below the stage. So we really don't see things like that. And as the scene is 360 degrees, we could only see the guy in front of us. So meaning we lack information about the status of player, which is at the moment the biggest issue we have on Fortnite. We still don't know who is alive or not.
Exactly. Like you, even at home, like if you, like we had the action feed, right? So we were more fortunate in that sense. But I'm trying to imagine what my viewing experience without the action feed would have been like. I think, to be honest, I don't think it would have been that good. If we didn't have the action feed, it would have been just a lot of us trying to see, okay, wait, who's alive? I can't see this person's name. I can't see this person's name. Are they alive? Are they alive?
Yeah.
But obviously, like the action feed really did help with that.
But we saw some changes. I don't know if you watched, but in the last seconds, when there is, I don't recall if it's 8 or 6 people alive, they put above the screen, they put the photo of each player with this live information, so shield and life bar, and they remove and they graze them when they die. So you have the live information for the last moment. So what I like is they did a lot of work in order to make the last second of each round to be more stressful with more info. You can follow up, even if it's messy. You can understand what's happening.
To get into Epic's event as a whole, and trying to look at comparing that to other events that we've had. Did you attend Katowice?
No, I didn't have the opportunity. But I followed up.
Yeah. Obviously we've had this is a conversation we had on the podcast that we lost in terms of trying to compare Epic events to events not hosted by Epic, and obviously you said that it's really hard to do that. So just explain why it's so hard to compare.
The big difficulty is that first they don't have the same means to achieve their goals. The World Cup, for example, had multi-millions dollar budget just for the cash prize, so I cannot imagine how much budget there were in production. Katowice was, and we can say it because it has been said by players, and so Katowice had very, very large support from Epic Games in order to happen. First for the cash prize, but also in terms of technology because they have local servers and stuff like that. So the main
I even think there was a player who came out publicly and said something along the lines of like Epic were the people who actually flew everyone out and paid for all of that. I'm pretty sure. I'm not too sure about that, but I'm pretty sure I remember hearing that. Like Epic contribute a lot to kind of Visa.
Yeah. They actually provided the players, literally. ESL provided the organization, the stage, production, and stuff. But Epic was like, the logistic behind it. So making sure the event works. The main difference you're going to see is that you have the community events. If we remove Katowice from the equation, because it's an anomaly in terms of organization, community event cannot reach even a small percentage of what Epic can do on terms of events. The main reason is because they actually use every time the local servers, and that's the main problem. Most of the time they use local servers or online servers, but with a huge support from Epic. And any other event like LAN parties, like we do a lot in Europe, in NA, they don't like very much this kind of stuff. We don't have the same amount of money necessary, and at the end, the profit, the return on this type of investment is not worth it if you invest too much. You have to do low cost events in order to make sure you gain your meal at the end of the day. So that's, for me, it's the main difference. And also the fact that they use a lot of internal tool that we do not have access to. So it means that every time we try to compare a community event to the official events, it's not the same word. People needs to separate the two and understand that you have event organized and or heavily supported by Epic, and you have every other event. That's what's important.
So, what do you feel like needs to be done to be able to push that and change that narrative and that way of tournament, like the way in which we can actually have tournaments that are somewhat close to or somewhat of a percentage of what Epic is able to do?
I'd say the first thing is something they started to do like a few days ago. Give a schedule. Give us the overview of your planning for at least 3 months ago, 3 months in front. Because the main issue that tournament organizers have at the moment is that, we can spend 2 months to organize a big event, but then Epic will do like a special event with animation and shut down all services so you have access to. And I'm not saying that like it's possible. I say that because it happens. I was at an event, and literally in the middle of an influencer event, Epic shut down all access to custom games and all access to any mode except the robot versus monster event. And it was in the middle of an influencer event on a physical stuff. So we adapt, obviously, but. So the first thing would be, guys, give us a schedule. We don't care if you do whatever you want, but at least tell us when so we can actually fill the gap. And the second would be, I'd say, at least a support service, meaning, okay, what we do has not much of impact on your sales, so it doesn't really matter in terms of business. But if you agree to give us a service, at least help us to make sure the service works. Because at the moment, when you organize a tournament, you have no guarantee, no support services, except usually the community coordinators that help as much as they can, or community guys like War Legend. We try to help. Like in a few days, there's going to be like a LAN party in Iceland, and I'm going to be the person that will call if they have an issue, like, hey, I don't understand, I have a bug, like the button just disappear. How do I do? This information should be Epic providing it, because at the end we are users. So
exactly. I feel like it's very important that we have that, like like you said, when you don't understand somebody's plan, it's hard to work around it. Like imagine being at that event where all of a sudden your event has to stop and you're forced to watch a robot fight. Like what do you do then? You're like, yes, I can understand why it's very frustrating.
It's very simple. When you have an event that is actually entertaining, it's easy. You just share it. You stop your event and you share the event Epic forced you to watch. The good news is that the people on site won't complain, because usually Epic events are really nice in game. So it's not a loss. It's just that it's a nightmare in terms of production, because all your guys in production are briefed for a specific event, all your staff on site is briefed for a specific event, and magically you convert yourself in a movie theater. Not the
Yeah,
same service
yeah.
at all.
Of course, of course, of course. Um, let's talk about like actually the events that Epic have told us about and the schedule that they have actually, showed us. So obviously now we have it so that, and I don't know when this starts. I think does it start next week or the week after?
If I remember well, it starts at 17 or 18. Yeah,
17,
and after
something
the
like
week
that.
after, for sure, there is like the in-week event, like
Yeah.
the
So
solo entry or cash games.
yeah. So we're gonna have two solo cash cups a week, a trio cash cup. Then on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, we'll have the championship series, whatever that is. Obviously, that is nice to have. Um, but that even still, you still have that problem, like you alluded to earlier, of the fact that when Epic have all these events that they are dashing out millions and millions, like these events that they're going to be holding weekly, there's going to be millions and millions going into these events, right? And that leaves what, like 3 days in the week for anything else to happen, because even if you do have, like let's say War Legend was to create another Pan European Cup, right? They had the right amount of people to help run it, etc. And let's say even magically they got the sponsors to be able to provide money to have a LAN final, right?
Yeah, it's
It's most likely like as an org, how do you rationalize sending out your player to that event when they can stay at home, stream a Fortnite run event from their PCs at home and earn just as much, even maybe more money, you know?
yeah, it's the main problem we have now with it's the dark side of the strategy Epic Games put for months now. In terms of
Yeah,
cash prize, it's at when you drop 1 million per week, and actually your communication first is not good because you don't drop 1 million in a tournament. Basically, you
yeah,
drop less than that. The first player only win $5,000. So yeah, it's a lot, but at least it's something more realistic, and people should look that a bit closer. But the main
yeah,
problem we have is that when you occupy with multiple events over the week, you literally kill every possibility for community events to happen that have any importance. The main reason, as you said, is that what is the most effective for an esport organization? Because whatever Epic says, whatever Epic do in terms of communication and perception, organization manage players, and most of the players of their players are actually in the top European players, at least for our region. And the
yeah,
impact is they won't come to community events because it's in terms of business, because it's a company, an organization in sports. It's not like
yeah, yeah,
it's not a non-profit. So the player first, if the organizer of the LAN or whatever final manage to arrange the schedule around official events, you still have the logistic part, which is a nightmare because player cannot play when they are in a plane or in a train in transport. And usually it
yeah,
happens on Thursday or Fridays. And now we have the trio event on Friday and solo on Thursday. So it means that first the organization, if they take some percentage, they lose because the player most of the time can get some cool cash prizes. And the
yeah,
player itself lose also the possibility to have access to a content that will generate a lot of view on his channel. So it means, again, some loss. So at the point, I'm like, okay, guys, it's cool for you. It's cool for the players because they ask for more competitive event and more cash because obviously if they can gain a lot of money, they
yes,
will not complain.
yeah,
But at the end,
yeah, of course,
I'm afraid on the long term, it will have a negative impact because no one, I'm saying like this, no one will want to organize any competitive event on Fortnite except Epic Games itself. And
yeah,
I'm not sure that's what they want. Even if they don't push into this direction, I'm not sure that's what they want. But just to keep in context, for Epic Games, they told us on the announcement, only 10% of the players at the moment are no, it's not 10. It's they said they had 40 million participants to the World Cup, and the last announcement was like they had 250 million accounts on Fortnite. So basically, they
yeah,
have 20% of the market is competitive. So whatever you have on the side that is not competitive can still happen. For example, if you want to have like an influencer doing a nice event for creative or whatever, the competitive event will not have any impact on this event you organize as a community.
Yeah. I like that you drew us over here smoothly towards the aspect of the competitive team and the competitive aspect. Apologies, I've got like a tickly cough here. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, the competitive team obviously only occupy a small percent. Well, not, I don't want to say small, but they don't occupy a majority of, what is the Fortnite as a whole. And obviously, with the introduction of something like the mech to the game, right? And even another example of something like Stormflip to Arena back a couple of weeks/months ago. I know for a fact, Nate Nance's not sitting in his office. They're like, this is great. This is what's best for competitive Fortnite. This is the item that's going to make things good for... Like, he's obviously not doing that, And obviously, I know from reading articles recently, I know there's a lot of people who have worked on other really good competitive games. I've seen people who come from the, CSGO competitive team, the League of Legends comp team. Like, I've seen people who come from those teams, and I've heard that they actually work for Epic's competitive team. And I'm like, with such a large team of people with massive experience in other competitive games, how is it that these guys are just, how is it that we have stuff like this happening with the mech and stuff? And I think obviously you alluded to that earlier, saying how, some of the teams don't actually work together necessarily.
Yeah.
There may be times where there's a lack of communication. What do you think needs to be done? What do you think the competitive team needs to do? And
actually, they just have to do what they want to do, because one thing people need to understand, I'd say you can see it if you look at it, because it's here. The information is public on social networks.
Yeah.
As you said, a lot of people from esport or competitive games environments are now working into the competitive team since a few months. The main thing you need to understand and see, it's the changes that happened after Katowice. Before Katowice, no communication, strange ideas going from nowhere, strange organization in terms of events. It was very messy. After Katowice, we see a lot of changes in terms of communication, in terms of patch fixing, in terms of tests. They did some tests with players in order to see if the servers held. We saw a lot of fix in terms of, dimension, like in certain situation where people with constructing a lot of buildings very fast, meaning competitive players, because only them construct that fast. The server was like laggy, so we fixed that. So we see a lot of changes between March and April. Beginning of the World Cup, the game was good, but the Nate arrived just, if I remember well, around May, if I'm not mistaken, he arrived. So basically, as in any new, when you join a new job, it takes you 3 months to get into the topics and take responsibilities. But we already see some changes. The announcement of a schedule 1 month in front, and not just, we're going to do that. No, it's more like you're going to have at this date, at this rhythm, this type of event with this type of information we can give you at the moment. So it's good. We can see already changes. So the only thing I'd like to say, once you have the context, is give a chance to the competitive to do their job. They will do it, I'm certain of it, because all the guys we see in Europe and in NA have the best interest into making Fortnite competitive, something that is cool to watch, because the World Cup was a huge success in their own words. The announcement says, it was a big event. We are really happy about it. The work was incredible. And let's say for Epic Games as a company, not Fortnite, it was also the best introduction to their Unreal Engine newest technology, which is inserting 3D elements directly live in broadcast. And that's something to take in consideration. So they have all interest, I think, all the means they need to actually make something good and something cool to watch and something enjoyable. So just Let's give them some time, and I'm sure they're going to go out with something cool that everyone will like. Maybe not the community organizer like us, but at least the player will be happy at the end.
Yeah. And I think obviously even now we've already started to see the changes, like the fact that they actually announced to us what they're doing in terms of all of the events, like the plan in which they have, that shows a change. And I think even when people have to remember that because of the amount of time it takes to plan certain things, like for example the World Cup, most of what the World Cup would have already been predetermined before Nate arrived,
Yeah.
because obviously the timing of his arrival would have meant that he didn't have as much time to change certain things. So you never know, maybe if Nate Nance was working 6-8 months earlier than the World Cup, it's a completely different event. We have a completely different scene. So I think obviously now with the beginning, I think if we're gonna look back in history and like put dates and mark points, I think this is now the time where we say this is what Nate Nance and this competitive team is doing for Fortnite. This should be the big, like, this is where we should start it from in terms of looking at what is done.
Yeah, and if you want a reference, just look at Katowice. We had Robertson arriving in Europe. If I remember, it was like in October or just before in September at Epic Games. And a few months later, hello, Katowice. So just give time, and maybe we're going to see some things very cool happen.
Yeah, 100%. So just getting back into things, I wanna just talk. We talked about obviously the money and how it affects organizations, how it affects tournament hosts. Let's talk about just how it affects players, because in a scene where you have such young players, we have teenagers like that. Straight up, we just saw a 16-year-old win $3 million. We're having 15-year-olds come in second place in duos and winning large amounts of money. It's like how do we have support for these players in terms of helping them to manage their fame and their money?
The first thing, obviously, is in Europe we trust a lot the parents to do the I'd say the security part for the good health of the players. I have no information in my possession, so I don't know what they do. If Epic assists players in terms of moral and emotional support. I know in France, for example, that when people win the lottery, the national lottery, you have a bunch of experts provided by the organizer of the lottery that helps you, that advise you what is the best, how to make things work in order not to be sure that people don't go crazy. Actually, we saw like a lot of emotion. I remember the video of one of the, not the winner, but one of the top players crying in the hand of his father. It's literally the amount of emotion it can bring to a child. And the American culture of the more money you get, the better it is. It's not, in Europe, we tend to think that it's not good for the health of the children. They don't really understand the meaning, the value of things, and how much it's hard to work. And this has a real impact on their behavior. For example, we can start to see some change in behavior from the teenagers. They start to think they are entitled, and this type of behavior is the most toxic things you can find in sports in general, because these kids just work 1 year. 1 year. They have many years to come, and if they start to process things with this amount of money, they will be disconnected, and disconnection is not good for their life in general. So what I'm afraid first is the danger for the children, because in France we had a real question, like, guys, we had parents asking expert on Fortnite, how do I make sure my kid is good at Fortnite so I can make sure he leaves schools and play to Fortnite to gain money? And this type of behavior is very toxic, very bad, and I feel bad about that. The second thing is also it's not good for Epic Games themselves on one specific point, because it's general in any type of competition or event you organize. If you put a very big prize at the beginning, After that, people take this as something that is due. So you spread 100 million for 1 year. How much are you going to
Oh,
spread next
yeah,
year?
that like, do you know what I mean? Like now, if Epic ever have a prize pool for a year that's less than 100 million, then it's like, oh, okay, this game is dying. We must move on to the next thing.
Exactly. And we already see that. For example, now we have players that refuse to play a community tournament with $300 to win. And you're like, guys, 300, you imagine people work like 4 days to get that in some country in Europe,
Yeah,
even a month for
yeah,
some. So
yeah,
how can you say it's not much? And
yeah.
the issue is like it can have a bad effect on for example, the solo cash cup. If the price pool is too low from the player point of view, that is actually standardized by Epic with their own cash prices, you're going to have a side effect. Actually, competitive player will not promote and will not invest themselves as much as you would like to see in terms of entertainment. And
Oh, of course.
because if you see kids don't take it seriously, who cares? Like it's a kid play. Like it's a play video game for kids. You don't
Yeah,
play seriously. Like, yeah, it's not interesting to watch. Uh, what is interesting is when you
I've
see it.
already had. I was just gonna say, I've already had pro players tell me that like, in terms of this, they're not focused on the solo cash cup. They're just gonna play it for the sake of it, you know, just because it's easy money, and they're not gonna invest themselves in it as much as they will for the championship series, etc.
Yep, that's the bad part of it. So wait and see. But we have two topics that are, I think, important for the long-term view of this beautiful opportunity there is now with Fortnite. Epic Games and a lot of their employees can do very crazy things. I can testify because I did crazy things thanks to Fortnite, and I'm not the only one. A lot of people did things I never believed they would do 1 year ago. And
Yeah,
I'm afraid that taking that kind of risk can actually compromise the type of opportunity we can have in the future. For example, why not redo the Katowice, but without this amount of cash price and just for the sake of saying, I'm the best player of Europe and I proved it. Point.
yeah, yeah,
Obviously, you can have
yeah,
like some, I don't know, cool stuff to do, vacation around the world. You can have like a cool stuff to spread, participate in other event and stuff, some hype around it,
yeah,
but not saying that this event is because I have won like 500, 1,000 euros, and that's cool. No, it's you won the tournament. Like Buga, it's not like he won 3 million. It's like he's the best solo player in the world. Point. That's what
yeah.
I'm interested in.
I think it's we're getting close to the point. Like, it's scary because I feel like we're getting close to the point where people are starting to lose that passion in terms of, you know, it's not like people very much like people are settling. Do you know what I mean? Like, a lot of people have the mentality of, oh, I need to place 60th so I get $500 more than I do if I play 61st. You know, like,
Yeah.
it's less about I want to be the best, and it's about how I can get this amount of money. And when you get to that point, it becomes very scary, because then what happens when Epic, unfortunately, what happens if in a world where Epic can't provide that same amount of money?
Yeah.
Well, then the players are just like, okay, well, this isn't where I'm going to put my effort into.
I do agree for the pre-event stage. During the event, usually players like for seeing the faces of the player from where I was during the play, it was like they were not thinking about money. They were just focused on
Oh, of
winning.
course, yeah.
So
Winning, yeah,
that's the
yeah,
kind of emotion we want to see in competition, like people who push themselves above the limit in order to win. That's what we want,
yeah,
what we expect. But what we don't want is them thinking in front of the event, yeah, it's not that much of money, so less pressure. No, no,
yeah,
guys,
yeah, yeah,
best occasion to shine. Do it.
yeah.
Win.
And it's like, it's even people like me, like I'm like I'm sure there's other people as well that are doing this that I'm just can't name off the top of my head now, but it's important that we push narratives, because when one of the greatest things that we have in as humans is, you know, our stories and the narratives we push. So if we're able to push narratives, then it means that people push for those narratives. Like if we have a bunch of people in media around Fortnite saying, "Oh, the winner of this event, and these events, this makes you the best in the world." If we promote that and make that a bigger deal than it currently is, then people will push for that. You'll strive towards that rather than just because right now there's none of that. Like people don't have debates about who's the best anymore, like as much as they used to or much as they possibly could. I think there's been a lot of events that we've had, so it's not like we can't make these debates, but yet people don't have them because it's not as big of a focus. And I think leading on to that, I think if we have organizations, right? If we have organizations who build an infrastructure within the orgs, that is similar to sports. I know we've had this conversation of where in sports, right, you don't just have, like in Fortnite right now, most teams we have, let's say for trios, right, we have player A, player B, player C. That's it. Some teams now are starting to have coaches. Some players are starting to have coaches. Coaching is something that's starting to be a bigger deal. But a lot of teams, there's not the people there teaching them outside of just Fortnite and playing the game. Like with a lot of these kids, if I wish I was in charge of an organization or something, because that's something I try to push for, to educate these kids outside of just what they're doing in Fortnite. Because like you said, if you with these kids earning the money they're making, they're gonna become disconnected eventually,
Yeah.
And that's not like, Fortnite most likely is not gonna be around for forever. So you can't allow it to impact your life negatively forever in that way of you becoming disconnected. And I feel in like even a simple thing like just something like mental health, right?
Yeah, the breakdowns they can have if they lose. How do they manage that? It was a debate we had in France. We have few coaches that are actually a public figure in France that try to share on Twitch and on Twitter whatever they can with players during the World Cup qualifier. They end up with people like they thought they was the worst in the world because they end up like in the 200 or 300 best player in Europe. And I guess, hey, guys, you just qualified over 3,000 people. So yes, you're good. You can get better, but still the game is not meant to actually, it's too random at the moment. There's too much RNG to make sure. And the role of the coach, of the manager, is to secure and help the player to develop. The same way a manager in a company is here to make sure actually people are good at what they do and they feel good in their job. And that's because it's time of productivity. And that's why I think parents that would like their children to get good at Fortnite should actually not seek for how I can make my kids better. It's like, I'm looking for a club that can actually host my kid and teach him how to play and have a healthy life, life on the side, and helping him also to have a diploma so he can actually continue to work after Fortnite is over.
100%, because I know you said there's a French organization that does that well. I think it's MCES.
Yes, in southeast of France.
Yeah, they do that. Yeah, and it's like we need those organizations who push to bear. Like an organization is there to uplift you, and I think if we have that, like a simple thing of burnout in gaming, too often we have people get burnt out. Even if you look at the people who are competing, I'm sure even if we go back and look at the Pan-European Cup, and see some of the players who are competing there, I'm sure like a lot of those players probably don't even play the game anymore. And it's not just because they're not talented or they fell off. Like it's just that they got burnt out, And I think even if you have an org and you have someone at your org just to help manage your burnout, if you have in sports, for example, right? We have every sports team has set training hours, right?
Yeah.
And those are your hours to train, and then obviously you have a schedule of when you're going to play. So it stops you from getting burnt out because you know I have to train these certain hours, and outside of that, I can do practically whatever I want, right? Obviously, most athletes will obviously spend that to improve themselves even more beyond that, but it means that if they're not just playing the game, they're not getting burnt out. In Fortnite, that's not how it works, right? People sit here and play not 16 hours a day, but they play 10 plus hours a day every single day. And if some players have been doing that for months. Now, obviously, there's some players in the game who can do that, right? There's some players who like someone I know who can do that as Mongra. He's someone who, like, he for the past couple of months, that's what he's done, and he's fine with that. He doesn't get burnt out, but that's not what everyone is, right? Not everybody can.
No, it's not.
Put that kind of mental fortitude.
Biologically speaking, we are not all equal on that. Everyone needs to be careful about it. And technically speaking, a football player doesn't play 10 hours per day of football. They have a lot of work, training, for example. Doing some sport is very good. I see a lot of players, for example, the Solari team, they make a lot of physical activity in order to make sure their body and their mind is free. So it's a cool approach, and it's recognized in esports that actually having a healthy habits is good for actually your performance in the game, because you learn to think when you are under stress, physical stress, which you have when you are on stage, because the amount of adrenaline you have in the blood is very, very, very important, and you need to take that in consideration. And the role of the organization is to make sure that nothing bad happens to the kids, and that's something Epic at the moment. I don't think they have anything about it at the moment.
I think obviously in a situation where, like, obviously we have I think in Overwatch, right, where they have the Overwatch League, and obviously you have different roster spots, different league spots. If you have something like that, then obviously it's much easier for you to control, you know, like, and you can set regulations and say, okay, if you want to be a part of our league, you have to provide XYZ for your players, right?
Yeah.
But obviously in Fortnite we don't have that, and I'm not saying that we should have something like that in Fortnite, but I'm saying that Epic should find a way of regulating that sort of things. Like Epic, like, so far in what they've done, have made a big deal about, you know, not involving orgs in their competitive plan. You know, they've done a really good job of isolating orgs, which I'm personally against that, but obviously that's what they've done. And I think if they wanna ensure that, you know, the players are safe and protected, because that's not what they do. Like people sign for orgs because the orgs provide them, you know, salaries. They provide them that infrastructure to help them to grow, and obviously Epic doesn't do that for them, right? So they have to go to these orgs. But if Epic can ensure that the orgs are doing that, if Epic have, you know, some sort of rule where they say, I don't know, if you represent an org, you have to, that org has to provide you XYZ if you want to compete in our game, something like, you know, that obviously those are just rough workings that probably, you know, there's probably negatives to that, but just something along those lines to make sure that they are keeping players safe.
Yeah, and, but for that, on that point, we need to keep in mind the context for Epic is that they are so big that anything they need to do take monstrous scale. Like, for example, having cash prizes. How do I pay people around the world, because they do like a worldwide event every week, and they have to pay many players with different regulations for each country. So one of the item that is very difficult, I think, before even starting to speak about policy in terms of company, the amount of logistic it would represent to manage the topic of organization, having any type of contractual link with the editor would be a nightmare. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why they never took, if they had done that at the beginning, maybe they would at the moment have something cool. But now the game is so big and so international, it makes things not impossible, but it's going to be hell of a work for them to do so. I guess them good luck. To accept, in terms of legal terms, to be able to show the name of an organization in their show, because it means that they use the right of quoting a brand, using logos and stuff like that, which is in terms of legal, very, very, very complicated. And trust me, Epic, on this point, when they work with people, they do have a legal service, so it makes things very, very hard.
Yeah. Well, on that note, man, I think we're kind of rounding up here. We've been going for an hour, so and I think you provided so much insight. You provided a lot of insight into a lot of things. I think a lot of people enjoy listening to this, because very interesting. I've learned a lot personally from speaking to you. Is there anything you want to plug? Anything you're doing you want to announce?
The only thing I'd say if people are listening is that if you're looking to support the community, organize event, whatever the scale, whatever you do, you're gonna have enough people to play because it's Fortnite. So don't matter how many people you get, you will always have a cool event. Focalize on quality and stuff. And
Yeah.
for players, it would be, guys, just play to win. It's the best in a video game. I didn't play video game for, I don't know, 15 years now, just for winning stuff, money, and now I don't care. I just play for winning. It's just satisfying by itself. After that, if you manage to get your life with it and win a lot so you can make sure the rest of your life you don't need to work, good for you. But keep that in mind. What you're gonna do when playing is being your job and you don't take pleasure about it. What about that?
100%. Well, it's been great talking to you, man. I hope we can have you on here soon. We can have you on here again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much for the invitation.